After 35 years of dominating grade school cafeteria lunchtime, that yellow box filled with hyper palatable foods is getting remixed by the creator packaged goods movement. In the opening section of the first song within Kanye West's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, which is arguably the best hip hop album ever created, full stop, it states, "You might think you've peeped the scene, you haven't, the real one's far too mean. The watered down one, the one you know, was made up centuries ago." They made it sound all whack and corny. Yes, it's awful, blasted, boring, twisted fiction, sick addiction. And you might be wondering, what the heck does that obscure lyrical reference have to do with the recent product launch, Lunchly, a kid friendly meal kit from mega YouTubers MrBeast, Logan Paul, and KSI? As the final part of that opening goes, well, gather round, children, zip it, listen. Growing up in the 90s, Lunchables was a fixture within the Schall household, and I know I wasn't alone, as Lunchables became this iconic favorite food item for kids that allowed them to challenge anyone inside of the grade school lunch cafeteria for who had the coolest lunch. And we all know how important being cool is during that time of your life. But whether parents love Lunchables for the low price and convenience, or kids because it encouraged them to play with their food, it's hard to argue that those yellow, kid friendly charcuterie boxes are one of the most commercially successful food products ever created. In fact, Lunchables generated over $200 million in revenue during its rollout period, and most recently topped out at around $2 billion in revenue. But while that's certainly impressive, how about we take a trip back in time a few years before the commercialization of Lunchables? As I believe knowing the history of this CPG product is foundational information that I'll build upon later regarding Lunchly. In 1979, the Oscar Meyer company hired Robert Drain to impact the strategic thinking and invent breakthrough products that would address evolving consumer needs and lifestyles. With bologna starting to become less popular as a lunch meat in the 1980s and Oscar Mayer sitting on stockpiles of it, Robert Drain and his small team dubbed the Lunch Company was tasked to take bologna beyond its core offering and reimagine it profitably within a new category. So these prepackaged lunches filled with processed meat, cheese, and crackers were actually developed not to fill some hole in the market or appeal to kids, but to solve a major demand problem for a core input utilized within the Oscar Mayer company. That being said, Robert Drain quickly discovered, after organizing focus groups of American mothers, that Lunchables would help them solve a major time constraint. And if you were curious, the Lunchables packaging design was said to be a remix of the famous TV dinners from the 1960s. The buttered crackers were a substitute for bread because they would elongate shelf life, but then the decision to utilize processed cheese and not natural cheddar to save costs will kind of transition us into the next interesting part of the Lunchables story. In 1988, just when Lunchables is getting to the end of its development cycle, Kraft Foods merged with General Foods, the owner of Oscar Mayer. But it's the entity that merged these two food conglomerates together and not the decision to swap cheese that creates the most interesting contagion effect. As mentioned earlier, Lunchables was an immediate success, generating over $200 million in sales year one and showing more than a 50% retention rate. The one big issue was that the Lunchables multi-step assembly production process was too expensive, and the product lost $20 million in that first year. But likely why Lunchables didn't become just another great idea, bad margins product innovation lying below the national CPG cemetery was that the entity merging General Foods and Kraft Foods was the cigarette giant Phillip Morris that understood that fixing a cost problem is easier than fixing a demand problem. So for us younger folk that don't remember this, yes, tobacco companies did own major food divisions in the 1980s. And yes, I said companies plural because another cigarette giant, RJ Reynolds, owned cookies and snacks maker Nabisco. And while these tobacco giants spun off their food companies and largely exited the CPG industry by the 2000s, they left a legacy on the foods that we still eat today. Because engineering products to make consumers return for more is a specialty of tobacco companies. A recent study conducted by researchers at the University of Kansas showed that between 1988 and 2001, tobacco owned US food companies produced more hyper-palatable foods than those not owned by tobacco giants. And for those unfamiliar with this term, hyper-palatable foods have specific combinations of fat, sugar, sodium, and carbohydrates that make them artificially rewarding to eat and harder to stop consuming. But beyond that product development trickery, these tobacco companies also applied strategic marketing playbook elements by leveraging line extensions that appeal to different audience segments. Armed with this new information and presumed connection to tobacco companies, some advocacy groups have begun to suggest that US regulatory bodies should limit the availability of hyperpalatable foods with age restrictions, not unlike tobacco. Now, I'm all for supporting positive public health and wellness initiatives and generally agree that ultra processed foods and or hyperpalatable foods have risks associated with them. Age restrictions seem a bit too universally restrictive for me to wrap my head around. But that being said, I also do not believe our government, aka the US Department of Agriculture, should have approved Lunchables to be included within the National School Lunch Program. Even if it was reformulated with ingredients to ensure the product met federal guidelines, it's crazy to think that a previous Phillip Morris executive once joked that the healthiest item in a package of Lunchables was the napkin. So, to clarify my statement, because I know there's some heat on this subject matter, I'm all for parents having the choice to purchase Lunchables and pack them in their kids' lunches, but having our government signal directly or indirectly the product's healthfulness is wrong. But I don't fault Lunchables' current owner, Kraft Heinz, for this sales channel strategy, as the school lunch market is something like a $25 billion growth opportunity that creates generations of future customers. And that maybe brings us back to that introductory statement. For those that are living under a rock and didn't see the product announcement from a few weeks ago, Lunchly is a kid-friendly meal kit that's positioned as a better for you competitor to Lunchables. Now, there are already several other better for you Lunchables competitors in the market, but what makes this one noteworthy is that it's a joint venture between two creator packaged goods brands. Lunchly was a collaboration between Prime, the beverage brand backed by Logan Paul and KSI, and Feastables, the chocolate brand created by MrBeast. So each box of Lunchly will include a miniature Feastables bar and a bottle of Prime hydration. To be completely honest, this is a wild move. Yes, tobacco-owned US food executives introduced Lunchables line extensions with Snickers, Reese's peanut butter cups, Kool-Aid, and Capri Sun, but we're talking about two creator packaged goods brands that are co-creating a new, more perishable product that also sees them both entering a new grocery retail section. So then the question likely is why? Similar to when Lunchables was being developed, there's maybe a obvious and a not so obvious answer. Based on the marketing angle taken thus far, the obvious answer is that Lunchly saw a market opportunity that paired all of the previous and still strong Lunchables value propositions for parents, like convenience and value, and kids like wanting to be cool in the school cafeteria with these better for you product attributes. But that would mean the market actually wanted a better for you Lunchables version, right? Here's the strange thing about the last several decades of Lunchables. Every attempt by the brand manufacturer to pivot towards healthier ingredients has failed because of poor sales activity. Though maybe that's because Lunchables has always been about essentially turning lunchtime into an empowering creative exercise that gave children control over their own meals. And what kind of kid would pick fruit or yogurt over candy? But maybe all that Lunchly marketing to parents isn't meant to even trickle down to kids, as about 30% of Lunchables revenue is projected to come from adult consumption. Regardless, if you remember, Lunchables was actually created to solve a bologna oversupply and popularity problem for Oscar Meyer. And though I don't think anyone involved with Lunchly intentionally created this historical remix, Prime is facing similar oversupply and popularity problems right now. According to recent NielsenIQ data reports, Prime volume has been falling somewhere around 30% year over year for much of this calendar year. But more interesting to the Lunchables connection is that Prime has been the target of recent litigation from its supply chain partners, with lawsuits alleging dedicated contract manufacturing capacity investments left unutilized and coconut ingredients contracts canceled. And since I don't follow the chocolate retail sales trends as closely, I'm not sure if ending a large sports sponsorship, aggressive international expansion, and or needing to upgrade Feastables product and brand identity could be a signal for possible business challenges or at least a lack of meeting high expectations. But the public rhetoric from MrBeast has been positive of the reasoning behind the brand's recent strategic moves. But again, I'm not stating any of this is a driver behind the creation of Lunchly or even a CPG remix story anyone within those teams even connected the dots on. But it does make you at least go, right? But I hope you enjoyed the first principles thinking that went into my latest YouTube video. If you did, can you do me a favor by hitting that like button? That quick and free action helps YouTube know my content is worth spreading to more people. Also, we're getting really close to reaching my next subscriber goal, and it would be great if you join me on this journey. But to do that, we need to fix the fact that slightly more than 3/4 of you that are watching this video right now are not subscribed to my YouTube channel, and that hurts my feelings. Regardless, I want to thank you for giving me some of your attention and time, and I'll see you on the next one.